All right, good afternoon. As a reminder, at 1 p.m., there'll be a briefing here by Ambassador Samuel Zbogar, permanent representative of the Republic of Slovenia to the United Nations, and he'll be here because he will be presiding over the Security Council for the month of December. He will, of course, brief you on the program of work. Just after I'm done with you and you're done with me, we will be joined by our friend Cesar Nunez, who, as you know, is the director of the UN AIDS office here in New York. And he's joining us because today is World AIDS Day, and he'll brief you on the launch of the World AIDS Day report entitled Overcoming Disruption, Transforming the AIDS Response. And you will hear more, of course, on that topic from our guests, but I did want to flag that in his message for World AIDS Day, the Secretary General noted major progress, including a 40% drop in new infections since 2010 and significant improvements in treatment access. Yet, he says, millions still lack prevention and care due to inequality and stigma. To end AIDS, Mr. Guterres urges greater investment in prevention, expanding treatment for all, and a human rights-based approach. This morning, the Secretary General spoke to the General Assembly's Fifth Committee and formally introduced the revised estimates report relating to the proposed program budget for 2026 and the support account for peacekeeping operations for the 2025-2026 period. Those revisions take into account initial measures to improve the management and operations of the Secretariat, resulting from the first work stream of the UN80 initiative, as well as targeted efficiencies and cost reduction to the proposed program budget for 2026 and the support account 2025-2026. Overall, the regular budget the Secretary General is proposing to bring the resources requirements for 2026 down to 3.238 billion United States dollars. That's a reduction of 577 million, or about 15.1% compared to 2025 appropriation. The proposed staffing table is revised to 11,594 posts, including special political missions. That's a reduction of about 18.8% compared to the approved staffing table for 2025. The Secretary General added the proposed reduction for special political missions compared to 2025 comprises a net decrease of $84.7 million US dollars due to the closure of missions, and a net decrease of $64.8 million for continuing missions. Today, the Secretary General also addressed by pre-recorded video message the opening of the 22nd meeting of the states parties to the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention, also known as the Ottawa Convention. He reminded participants that anti-personnel landmines are among the cruelest and most indiscriminate weapons ever created. They kill and they maim long after a conflict has ended. Yet today, as conflict rages, some states waver in their commitment, Mr. Guterres said. So let's be clear, he added, any weakening of the Ottawa Convention could spark a dangerous race to the bottom, and civilians would pay the highest price. This 22nd meeting of the states parties must strengthen our resolve to curb these vicious weapons, he added, and it must rally new parties and inspire the compliance for existing parties. He called on all to recommit to protecting lives, respecting international law, and restoring hope to communities threatened by landmines. Turning to the situation in Gaza, our colleagues with the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that humanitarian conditions remain extremely dire, even as aid operations continue across the Strip. Yesterday, the humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, Ramiz Al-Akbarov, concluded a 4-day visit to Gaza, where he met with our partners, visited humanitarian project sites, and spoke to people struggling to cope with the already appalling conditions as winter fast approaches. He stressed the importance of unfettered humanitarian access and the need for NGO partners to be able to bring supplies into Gaza. Meanwhile, our partners leading the health response report that they continue to restore services across the Strip, with 234 health service points now operational compared to about 197 before the ceasefire. While this is a significant improvement, efforts to expand access to health care continue to face challenges due to the lack of critical supplies and the vast destruction of infrastructure during 2 years of war. Our partners leading on logistics warn that Salah ad-Din Road remains closed for the movement of humanitarian cargo from Karim Shalom, Karim Abu Salam crossing, and the Al-Rashid Road and the Philadelphia Road corridor remain the only viable routes. This leads to congestions and exposes any convoy to looting and security risks. Meanwhile, our partners leading the shelter response warn that the needs remain very high, with 1.5 million people in need of urgent support. We and our partners continue to provide shelter assistance across the Gaza Strip. Between Wednesday and Thursday, our partners distributed tents, tarpaulins, bedding, and kitchen sets, as well as winter clothing vouchers to some 4,300 households. That includes 2,500 families in southern Gaza and nearly 1,800 in the north. Our partners were able to reopen 18 out of 31 temporary learning spaces affected by the rainstorms. This has allowed some 8,000 children to resume some form of learning. Over the weekend, 160 high-performance tents arrived in Gaza for their learning activities. This is the highest number of such tents received by our education partners to date. However, they warn that stationery and other educational supplies continue to be rejected, hampering efforts to scale up the response. So far, fewer than 3,200 individual learner kits have been able to enter Gaza. And finally, our partners working on cash assistance say they've completed transfer to 123,000 families since the ceasefire, which is already exceeding the target of 120,000 under the 60-day ceasefire plan. And the 2025 UN International Media Seminar on Peace in the Middle East is taking place in Conference Room 6 right now as we speak. The theme of this year is Breaking Barriers, Navigating the Dangers and Complexities of Reporting from Gaza and the West Bank. The Secretary General, in a message to today's seminar, said that journalists in Gaza have been facing the same risks and realities as people they cover, including displacement, famine, and death. Since the appalling attacks on October 7th, more than 260 media workers have been killed in Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territory, making it the deadliest conflict for journalists in decades, the Secretary General underscored. He emphasized that the rules of war are clear. Civilians and civilian infrastructure are not to be targeted. Journalists must be able to perform their essential work without interference, without intimidation, and of course without harm. This includes the unacceptable ban that prevents international journalists from actually entering Gaza freely. And moving to Sudan, I just wanted to make sure you had seen that Ramtane Lamamra, the Secretary General's special personal envoy, is currently in Port Sudan. There he held meetings with General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the president of the Transitional Sovereign Council of Sudan, as well as with other senior officials, including Kamil Idris, the Transitional Prime Minister, and Mohieldin Salim Ahmed Ibrahim, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Lamamra will travel tomorrow to Addis Ababa for further consultations with key stakeholders, including senior African Union and Ethiopian officials. The urgent need for better protection of civilians is at the forefront of all his discussions during these visits. And on the humanitarian front, a bleak picture continues to be painted as needs continue to rise, mainly across Darfur and the Kordofan regions, as well as northern and River Nile State. Our humanitarian colleagues report that aid organizations still cannot reach civilians inside El Fasher. The International Organization for Migration estimates that as of last week, more than 106,000 people have been displaced from the city and surrounding villages since last October. Nearly 80% of those displaced remain in rural villages west and north of the city without adequate support or safe passage for those wishing to travel onwards. Meanwhile, displacement from North Darfur and the Kordofan region is deepening needs in northern and River Nile State. Over the weekend, our humanitarian colleagues met with local officials and displaced families who fled those states. Their assessment showed that these families urgently need shelter and other essential items, as well as health services, water, sanitation, and hygiene assistance. In northern state alone, local authorities estimate that 7,000 people who sought refuge there in recent weeks are scattered across rural Daba region, with more than 300 people arriving each and every day. We and our partners are providing primary health care, we're providing food assistance, safe water, and psychosocial support, but funding shortfalls have left critical gaps, including on our ability to provide latrine coverage. We once again call on all parties to urgently guarantee safe, unhindered humanitarian access and protect civilians, including, of course, aid workers. It is equally vital that donors commit additional resources to reach people in greatest need across Sudan, including support for the local organizations and networks on the front line. Response. Our colleague Jean-Pierre Lacroix, as you know, is the head of our Peace Operations Department, is in Algeria today, where he is taking part in the 12th high-level seminar on peace and security in Africa. In a tweet on his activities, Mr. Lacroix welcomed Algeria's role in the Security Council and its continued support for peace operations. Prior to the visit, Mr. Lacroix wrapped up a 4-day visit to the Central African Republic. He said the country is following a positive trajectory with significant progress achieved, giving credit first and foremost to the Central African Republic and its people. During the visit, Mr. Lacroix had meetings with the President of the Central African Republic, the Prime Minister, and other senior government authorities, women's organizations, civil society groups, and the diplomatic community. With elections scheduled for the end of the month, Mr. Lacroix reaffirmed that the peacekeeping mission remains fully committed to supporting the organization of the polls so they can take place under the best possible conditions. He also noted that challenges remain and that efforts need to continue to protect civilians to further implement the peace process, including disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration of combatants, and also to enhance state authorities throughout the territory. Referring to peacekeeping liquidity crisis, Mr. Lacroix said the department paid tribute to all mission personnel and to the special representative, Valentine Rugwabiza, for the exceptional work they're carrying out and will continue to carry out despite constraints and challenging financial circumstances. And in the nearby Democratic Republic of the Congo, our peacekeeping mission there said they've assisted the Congolese army in screening some 9,400 prospective recruits who are seeking to join the armed forces at the Kamina Military Training Center in Olomani. This took place 27th and 28th of November, and we can tell you that because of this screening, 25 boys under the age of 18 were identified and separated because before they were formally inducted. These efforts were first put out as a part of action plans signed by 2012 by the government of the DRC with the UN to end recruitment and use of children in the country's armed forces. The Congolese armed forces completed measures, including in the action plan in 2017. These ongoing screenings to prevent children recruitment reflects a constructive collaboration between the government, the peacekeeping missions, Child Protection Section, UNICEF, and the Joint Technical Team Working Group on Children in Armed Conflict in the area of security sector reform. Also to flag that today the Ministry of Health in the DRC declared an end to the Ebola outbreak, which had been declared in early September in the Kasai province. That is good news. WHO and its partners provided technical, operational, and financial support to the government to contain this outbreak. This was the country's 16th Ebola outbreak, and needless to say that although the outbreak has been declared over, health authorities are maintaining surveillance to rapidly respond to any reemergence of the Ebola virus. Turning to Europe and Ukraine, our colleagues at the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that the city and the region of Kyiv were hit by large-scale drone and missile strikes over the weekend, killing and injuring several civilians. Hundreds of residential buildings and other civilian facilities were damaged. Up to 500,000 families in Kyiv lost electricity, with water and heating service also disrupted. According to a private energy company, power has since been restored to about 590,000 families, and repair is ongoing. In the city of Dnipro, authorities and aid workers report that an attack this morning also killed and injured civilians. Additional casualties were reported in the regions of Chernihiv, Donetsk, Kharkiv, Kherson, Sumy, and Zaporizhzhia. The attacks in those regions also caused widespread damage to civilian infrastructure. For its part, our friends at UNICEF say that 4.6 million children in Ukraine continue to face major disruption to education as the war entered its fourth academic year. Turning to Sri Lanka, we are closely following the situation after Cyclone Ditwa made landfall on Friday, bringing heavy rainfall and destruction across the country. The storm triggered widespread flooding and landslides and is believed to be the worst flood in the country's recent history. Our colleagues on the ground are coordinated closely with Sri Lanka's disaster management authorities. As of today, the authorities have reported 366 people killed and 367 missing, and over 1.1 million people impacted across all 25 districts in the country. More than 215,000 people are sheltering in over 1,500 government-run safety centers. Initial assessment report over 15,000 homes destroyed and widespread disruption to infrastructure, including the rail network and the power grid. Government is taking lead in search and rescue operations, but our humanitarian country team is preparing a joint response plan supported by OCHA Regional Office for the Pacific, and that team was activated by a resident coordinator on the ground, Marc-André Franche. The UN in Sri Lanka is rapidly mobilizing to provide immediate and life-saving support, including food, safe drinking water, hygiene, shelter items, as well as maternity and dignity kits. We, along with national authorities, are carrying out joint needs assessment so that support reaches all those who need it. Just to flag a report released today by FAO that warns that feeding a projected 10 billion people by 2050 will require bold and smarter choices in how the world manages its land, soil, and water. The report notes that over the past 60 years, global agricultural production tripled with only 8% increase in agricultural land, but high environmental and social costs. According to FAO, more than 60% of human-induced land degradation occurs on agricultural land. The report is online. Lastly, a few new resident coordinators to welcome. On November 30th, Fatou Aminata Lo Diop of Senegal assumed her post as UN resident coordinator in Gabon. She brings over 20 years of experience in the UN, including 12 in leadership role. Also, on November 30th, Hani Cueva Bateta of Peru took up her role as UN resident coordinator in Paraguay. She brings over 15 years of experience within the UN at headquarters, regional, and country level. And lastly, but not last, on December 1st, which is today, Stéphane Preisner of Austria began his assignment as the UN resident coordinator in India. He brings extensive experience in international development, multidisciplinary program leadership, having previously served as resident coordinator in Iran. That is it from me. Deji.
I know I asked you this question several times, but there seems have been another escalation between U.S. and Venezuela, especially President Trump announced the closing of the airspace of Venezuela. What is the United Nations position on the latest development?
I mean, our position has been, our position remains consistent. I mean, we've seen the reports about the airspace, and I can tell you, and it won't surprise you, that we call for the full respect of states' obligations under international law, including the Charter and all other applicable legal frameworks, as well as the use of existing mechanisms to address any issue, including these issues, peacefully, ensuring the safety and security and connectivity of international civil aviation. I think any other detailed question about the airspace issues should be directed to our friends in Montreal at ICAO.
Can a leader of a country announce the closing of the airspace of another country?
People say what they say. Any issue dealing with airspace and air travel should be dealt with through ICAO. Why not? It's a microphone.
Yeah. Still on vacation. Yeah. Just a quick follow-up to that. Given, the UN has staff in Venezuela and whatnot, have you sought any more information from the United States about what the president
We
meant?
don't listen. We don't have any further details. Our friends in ICAO are taking the lead on that. Our staff remains in Venezuela. Signore Vacara.
Grazie. It's a follow-up. For the UN, because there has been, in this case, there is another accident. There has been an article from the Washington Post where basically it's alleged that the United States military killed some people that should have been saved during bombing one of those boats. So the question is, somebody said that this is a war crime, but Venezuela and the United States, at least officially, they are not at war. So what, for the UN, a case like this, if it could be proven that this accident really happened, for the UN, is what is? Is a war crime? Is a homicide? What is this?
I'm not going to get into hypotheticals. We read the article in the Washington Post and subsequent reporting, which the contents of which are very troubling indeed. I can tell you that the Secretary General remains gravely concerned about the strikes on vessels allegedly involved in drug trafficking in the region. I would remind you and refer to what our High Commissioner Volker Turk said recently, which he says he found that these strikes may violate international human rights law and called for investigations that are transparent into these attacks.
Thank you, Stéphane. So today, the Chinese ambassador sent another letter to the UN Secretary General about the argument made by Japan's permanent representative to the UN in his recent letter to the SG. And can you confirm that does the SG have received the letter, and what is his comment on China's response to Japan's letter?
I can't confirm that he's gotten the letter. I'm sure the letter is, if he hasn't received it, it's in the process, and it will be shared with member states as these letters are. As we've said before, we're very aware about the rising tensions and continued tensions between the Republic of China, People's Republic of China, and Japan, and we want these tensions to be addressed through dialogue in a way to lower the existing tensions. Alex.
Thanks, Steph. Do you have any comments on the attacks on commercial ships in Black Sea?
Yes, I can tell you that our position, again, remains the same, that we reiterate that attacks against civilian infrastructure, including energy infrastructure, is prohibited under international law wherever they occur. Again, we all urge de-escalation and reiterate our position, which is consistent, to say the least, in support for an immediate, full and unconditional ceasefire that could pave the way towards a just, lasting, comprehensive peace in Ukraine, in line with the Charter, international law, and relevant UN
You mind if I have one more?
resolutions. What?
You mind if I have one more?
I do not mind.
Thank you, Steph. Any comments on the negotiation process about on Ukraine?
Look, I mean, it's obviously, I think, in an intense phase, right? We hope that it will lead to what we've been calling for, and I think it's important that it continue.
And you still haven't seen the peace plan by the United States?
No.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Steph. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute issued a report today that shows the world's 100 largest arms companies hit a record arms sale last year. That's $679 billion. And that is driven by conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza. So is SG concerned about the record sales, arms sales, and does he have any comments on that?
You know, I think the Secretary General, if I'm not mistaken, sometimes I am, was here not too long ago to talk about this obscene amount of money that is going to weapons sales compared to the struggle that we face every single day trying to fund our humanitarian operations. We understand that member states need to defend themselves and need for military, but I think if you look at you do a compare and contrast of the amount of money that is flowing into that sector as opposed to the amount of money that is being sucked out of the humanitarian and development sectors, it should give us all food for thought. Pam Falk, U.S. News and World Report.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Steph. My question is about the European Union has raised some alarms about Belarus's smuggling balloons going into Lithuania, and as of 45 minutes ago, von der Leyen was saying the situation is terrible and this has to stop. Is there anything the UN says about it?
I had not seen those reports because 45 minutes ago I was actually preparing to answer, so I could answer your questions here. Obviously, I failed in that, so let me see what we can get on that.
Okay, thank you. And just to follow up on the Ukraine peace plan, is there any role, given what you've seen about borders being laid out in the peace plan, Ukraine's borders, is there any role the UN can have on talking about those borders or about monitoring borders?
Well, I mean,
once they're
listen.
put in?
Let's
Thank
be clear. As I told Alex a few minutes ago, we have not seen the peace plan. We've obviously read about it, like you, in the media. Obviously, the Secretary General has always said he is the UN is willing and ready to support peace initiative that leads to what I've said probably 1,005 times in this room, right? Which includes the respect for Ukraine's sovereignty within its internationally recognized borders. Lenka.
Thank you, Steph. So the Russian ambassador Nebenzia told us that he doesn't think the UN will have any formal role in the Ukraine negotiations. Has anyone else maybe contacted you, like the United States or the Ukrainian delegations was just now in Florida? Maybe they have contacted you in this regard. Thank you.
Look, well, we have something official to announce. We will share that with you. But as I mentioned to Alex, I'm not aware that we've actually officially been shared the peace plan. Like anything, if there's anything, I will let you know, Lenka. Let me go to people who haven't asked a question first. Ms. Fasulo.
Thank you, Steph. This is apropos of Yemen. I was just wondering what the current state of affairs is there in regard to tensions.
Sadly, they continue. And we continue to engage with the Houthis in trying to secure the release of our 59 colleagues. Yes, please go ahead, Nemo.
Thank you, Stéphane. A few days ago, during the holidays, armed groups attacked Iraqi Kurdistan's biggest gas refinery, and then effectively shutting off 80% of the region's electricity supply. Do you have a statement on that from the Secretary General?
Well, I mean, as I can tell you, we stand against any attacks on civilian infrastructure, including energy infrastructure, which contravene international law. Yes, go ahead, then I'm going to go online.
Thank you, Steph. The United Nations officially kicked off the process of selection of the next Secretary General last week. So do you have any idea if any member states have nominated any candidates?
You know who's not involved in the selection process for the next Secretary General? The current Secretary General and his spokesperson. So I would encourage you to reach out to my esteemed colleague, Lenice Collins, who works for the President of the General Assembly, who will be able to speak freely on who our next boss will be. I see two gentlemen online. Iftikhar, go ahead.
Thank you, Steph. Do you have any rough or preliminary estimate of the damage caused by the cyclone in Sri Lanka?
By the
By
floods?
by the cyclone. Cyclone.
Oh, the cyclone. Yes, I read it out in the beginning. We'll send the notes around, but it was about 360, if I'm not mistaken. But you'll see it in the notes. I just shared it a few minutes ago.
Thank you.
Mr. Klein, I see you, which means you probably have a question for me.
I do indeed. Actually, they're related budgetary questions. First of all, what does the 11,594 posts in the Secretary General's remarks today cover? Given the fact that, at least as of the end of 2024, the Secretariat alone had approximately 33,000 employees. So could you clarify what it is we're talking about to which these reductions were applied?
They reflect posts on the regular budget, not posts on the extra budgetary resources. This is about the regular budget. Some posts in the Secretariat are funded through extra budgetary means by member states. This is all about the regular budget. The cuts have impacted every department. I mean, in the spokesperson's office alone, we lost two posts. They impacted the Secretary General's executive office and every department in the Secretariat.
So just to clarify, there weren't any reductions so far proposed to the balance of the Secretariat's employee roster, even those funded by voluntary.
No, I mean there's a reduction in posts. So I don't have the full figures on how many people took up the opportunity to leave voluntarily through so-called buyouts, but the Secretary General outlined the reduction of posts in the regular budget. We can speak offline to kind of do the math if you want.
Okay, all right, I would appreciate that, or you can send me some figures. But related, could you tell me, or maybe you can send me later, how many UN system employees attended the COP30 conference in person, and how much did this cost the UN?
I would first would encourage you to talk to our colleagues at UNFCCC who provide the Secretariat. I don't have an overall figure, but I would start your hunt for numbers with UNFCCC and then come back to us if you are not satisfied.
You don't have a range?
I do not have. My range itself is extremely limited.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Deji, then Stefano.
Back to Venezuela. Venezuela yesterday announced that they have filed a complaint with ICAO, the agency you just mentioned. Has that complaint also been received by the Secretary General?
I haven't seen it. I can check if we were copied on it.
But what is the standard process?
It's ICAO. ICAO is an independent, specialized agency. Anything having to do with things that fly in the air, planes, would go to ICAO.
Of course, but has the Venezuelan mission here have any communication with the Secretariat?
I do not know at this very moment, but I will check.
Thank you, Stéphane. After the attack a few days ago in Washington, D.C., of an Afghan national that killed a National Guard and severely wounded another one, President Trump said that he will stop immigration for all the third world country, but also he will pose forever, or use an expression like this, all the refugees from Afghanistan. Now, my question is, what does Secretary General think about it? Because I think there is a Security Council resolution presented by the United States at the time, where actually the Afghani civilians can should be accepted that any country they try to reach going out of Afghanistan. So what the
So
Secretary General think?
a couple of things. First of all, we of course unequivocally condemn the attack that took place in Washington. Countries and leaders of countries have a right and a responsibility to determine who comes into their country. And I think I would echo what the High Commission, the Office of the High Commissioner for Refugees said, which is, and this applies across the board, that one shouldn't scapegoat all communities for the actions of one person. That remains very important. And that member states have obligations under the 1951 Refugee Convention. Okay, on that note, I will leave you with our guest, Mr. Cesar Nunez.